Fabi's back.
Hey,
Forgive me. The business, or is there?
it's just me, Fabianna Labby's ID.
Very good. And just for everyone who might be hearing this for the first time, tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll chat a little bit about what we're trying to accomplish here.
Thanks. I am a clinical psychologist in independent practice. I work with couples, individuals, and groups on everything relationship focused. So anyone who's wanting to have better, more fulfilling relationships with themselves or anyone in their life, at work, family, I'm your gal.
I like that. And one of the things I always think about is when we talk about psychology or relationships, I think people immediately think, oh, like love relationships, right? But relationships are important, whether it's like an intimate partner or it could be a business partner or a friend or a family member. And I think we forget that sometimes. Relationships are important, and they spread further than just a relationship like a life partner or a husband or wife, right?
Absolutely. We're wired to be social, and relationships are the sort of the platform or foundation on which everything else in our life is built. And that doesn't mean that we have to have 5 million relationships, right? But people living in isolation do not do well.
Yeah.
And so, and there's really no reason to not have your relationships be as fulfilling as you want them to be.
Do you ever find when you talk to people that I wouldn't say it's common, but it's not as uncommon as I would think. People who kind of almost wear it like a badge of honor, that they enjoy being alone and they want to, they act like they're rebels or, real homebodies, if you will. And what is with that people do you think that's like deflection, or do you think that's honesty? Because I've legitimately had conversations with people that say that, and I'm like, you don't mean that, really? Like that's not necessary, especially if you live in a big city. It's like, then why are you here? Right? What do you think the why is behind that with a person that says things like that?
I think it's probably unique to each individual, but what sort of popped into my head right away is that somebody who's been hurt in relationships and doesn't have a sense of what to do to get what they need from other people. So what do? We put up protective walls, right? So that's an incredible way of using your words to protect yourself from any
Adversity,
or
pain.
pain. Yeah.
Do you hear that? Do you hear that a lot from people that kind of make comments? Because the way that I hear it a lot is, you'd be shocked the amount of times where I have like an initial conversation or consultation with clients when it comes to home loans. And, I ask them, like, what are your goals with home buying and what are you trying to accomplish? And, you hear a lot like, oh, well, what I really want to do is I want to buy something outside of the city. I want to get a reasonable amount of land. And then they'll slip this one in there. Like, I don't really like people that much. I don't want to be around a lot of people. And I'm always kind of, I don't know what the word is, that like, I hear that. It's very loud to me because, to your point, it's like, I love people. In fact, I did a
It's why you do what you do.
yeah, I did a silent retreat. I try to do one every year. I haven't done one this year, and last year was the first year I didn't do one in like 4 years. But one of the things that I wrote on my initial silent retreat was how important, just relationships and people were to me. That, hypothetically, if I was like the last man on earth, like that would just be, that'd be like the worst case scenario for me. I would really not want to be in a world where like I was the only person to exist. So when people make comments like that, and again, I hear it more often just because of the house thing, like, I'm going to buy land, I don't want to be around people. It always kind of intrigues me in a strange way, because I just don't understand that mindset. I get, like, you don't necessarily have to be in a big city and be around tons and tons of people all the time. But to say, like, yeah, I want to move away from everybody and do my own thing, I almost feel like they're lying.
And my thought about that is really that there are introverts, right? There are people who, in that kind of a scenario, I'd just be curious and I'd ask questions. What is it about people that you don't like,
Yeah.
right? My sense there is that, and I know because as an introvert, I feel this, if I spend too much time out in traffic in Austin, surrounded by people everywhere, I get like, give me a cottage in the woods somewhere where,
Right.
that doesn't mean that I wouldn't. I mean, we have cell phones, right?
Sure.
And we have email. So it doesn't mean that I wouldn't still stay connected
Right.
with people. So I think that's probably the most important thing when somebody says, I'm a lone wolf or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so tell me about that. How long have you operated in the world that way? And then try and get more information about it. Because it could be that it's just, introversion, which is a characteristic that we're born with, or self-protective.
Is like introvert and extrovert from your experience, is that like, does that follow the 80-20 rule, or is that more like, I mean, just, I know it's probably not something you could quantify easily, but do you find that more people are extroverted versus introverted, or is it the other way, or?
I don't know, but I'm going to recommend a book. And I think actually the introverts need to read this book to understand themselves, but extroverts really need to read the book to understand their introverted friends
Okay.
and partners. It's a book called Quiet. And I can't remember, it's written by a journalist who does an incredible job of summarizing probably the largest body of research, because introversion and extroversion is a construct that's been around forever in psychology. She summarizes the research brilliantly and then looks at Fortune 500 companies, the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and found that there's an incredibly large number of CEOs that are introverts.
Okay.
And business schools are largely taught in a group learning model. So she goes to Harvard Business School and she learns all about how that works. And it's a really phenomenal book. I only read about half of it because I got it from the library and I had to return it because someone was waiting for it. So I can't fully tell you the whole punchline of the book. But I highly recommend it if you want to understand
What's the name of the book?
that construct. It's called Quiet.
Quiet.
And as I was reading, I was like finding myself in the pages of the book. Right?
Interesting.
So I recommend that a lot, actually, to couples because it's not unusual for introverts and extroverts to partner up, and then that difference sort of becomes not sort of it can become the source of conflict. So if you can get to a place of understanding
Sure.
where your partner's coming from, it's easier.
Well, and that's a nice segue into what we were talking about, because when I think about those comments, your first reaction was you would have questions. And, I think at the end of the day, a lot of times when we make decisions or make comments like that, it's typically because, something happened and we're trying to avoid some sort of work or pain. And therefore, doing things like having conversations about that, that's hard sometimes, especially for an introvert, right? I would envision, I'm not an introvert, so I'm only speculating, or at least I don't think I am. I would envision that having conversations about why someone is introverted or why someone is guarded or why someone makes comments like, oh, I don't really like being around people, I would think that a lot of that is probably hard to have a chat about, and probably even harder for somebody who makes comments like that.
So the thing about introversion and extroversion get misclassified as shyness and outgoing or sociability.
Okay.
That's a different construct. Introversion and extroversion is really how you refuel. So
Can you unpack that?
So I'm an introvert. When I tell people that I'm an introvert, they're like, you go and you meet people and you're out and you're talking to people all the time. When I go to a happy hour and I'm talking to a lot of people, when I leave, I need to just hole up in my living room with a book and unplug and not talk
Be quiet.
and not talk to anybody.
Right.
Right? And that's how I refuel. If I've had a bad day, I'm not going to go to happy hour and hang out with people.
Right.
An extrovert, if they have a bad day, they want people.
Yeah.
They get energized. They recharge by interacting with people. So a lot of people are tossing around things like I'm a social introvert. I'm a I don't know, extroverted introvert, whatever that is. And that's in the book, right? She talks about how when you put an introvert in a setting where they have to engage, like in business school and work on group projects and everything is in groups and interacting with other people, they can rise to the occasion. I can be social. I like people,
Right.
but I hit my limit. At a certain point, I'm like, oh my God, if I have to talk to one more person, and that's when you'll find me sitting in the corner on my phone or a lot of times I think what introverts will do is just go to the bathroom for a little bit and just chill, right? And just regroup, and then you can go out and do it again. So now whenever I go to a social gathering, I would just be like, oh, Fabi's in the bathroom. She's regrouping.
Well, you touched on it a little bit in the very beginning, but I guess I'll just directly ask it. I mean, do you feel that those traits are more nature versus nurture or the other way around?
They're hardwired.
Okay.
They're hardwired.
It's interesting. But yeah, touching on that again, talking about the hard conversations, the hard work. I mean, that was one of the things that we chatted about right before we kind of turned everything on is, possibly putting something together to where we would have conversations about maybe some of the misnomers or even the poor experiences that people have had with, having conversations like that with therapists. And I just wanted to, bring that up because I think that we can both agree, there's just like any business, there's people that will say very great things about therapy, and there's always the bad side too. So getting people on here with the intention of having conversations, whether it was a good experience or a bad experience, we chatted about the possibility of, getting just random people that, would be willing to share their experience in terms of what it was like when they had their therapy sessions, whether that be with couples therapy or just, individual therapy. And that was something you had brought to me. What kind of sparked that idea?
Well, going back to what we were talking about at the beginning, right? The relationship with a therapist is a relationship. Yeah. And therapists we're all human. So we all get fairly similar training, right? You go to, a school in one part of the country, you might get more psychoanalytic type training, and you go to another part of the country, you might get more cognitive behavioral therapy kind of exposure. But at its core, our training is all pretty similar. The X factor in therapy is the therapist, right? Yeah. It's filtered through who I am as a person. And who I am as a person may not be the best fit for every client. I think we may have talked about this when I was here last time.
Yeah, a little bit.
And so not all the time. I'm not going to say that there aren't bad therapists out there.
Sure.
But sometimes when people have a negative experience in therapy, it's not because the therapist wasn't a good therapist. It's because the therapist wasn't a good fit for them. And I think that it can be really helpful to unpack that, not in a deep emotional way, but almost in a real intellectual way, do a postmortem and try and understand, just understand what happened, partly to demystify and destigmatize the therapeutic process. Therapists don't do anything to their clients, right? We take in what a client is saying to us. We filter it through our experience, our training, our knowledge, and our lived experience, and then sort of feed it back. Hopefully in a way that is new and can be received in a way that moves the client forward. I mean, that's not all of it, but
Sure.
That's a big part of what we do. I don't know if I'm not answering your question.
Well, I think you have. I mean, ultimately, I'm hearing two things, and you know, they're both true. Number one is that the relationship with the therapist is important, and I have a few questions in respect to that. And then I think the other piece that you're trying to touch on, but and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a lot of it is expectation, right? I think that when I talk to other people who have had bad experiences in therapy, I think that the expectation, either whether it was set poorly by the therapist or just, I mean, I think sometimes, again, being in a service-based business, like there's only so much that people can do, and expectation really is kind of one of the most important things, and there's nothing more deflating than someone overpromising and under-delivering, right? And I think that for some, going into therapy is, I'm going to sit with this person and I'm going to talk with them, and this is going to solve all my problems. And I think anybody who's, had a good experience with therapy is definitely not going into it with that mentality. And then I think the other piece of it, it's interesting that I'm kind of talking through this myself, because I've been having this kind of come up quite a bit lately in my life, where I'm really starting to notice this common theme with people in regards to having some sort of inability to achieve whatever result that they are trying to achieve because they've never experienced it. So let me give like a basic example, like weight loss, right? Let's say, I want to get in great shape, and I want to lose weight, and, I've got this like body image that I'm trying to get to. Well, if I've never really been in good shape, right, I can watch videos on it. I can see other people that have, had success in it. And if I've never really been in shape or experienced myself at, like, for lack of a better term, like somewhat of a peak performance, for whatever reason, it's very difficult for a lot of people to conceptualize how that could happen. And so you kind of start off and you put a couple weeks in, and, you're not seeing results right away. And so automatically you're like, you know what, this isn't working. Now take somebody who maybe, let's say in high school or college, was athletic, and at one point in time was in really, really good shape. And years go by and age happens, we all know. And now they're, maybe they got that extra 10 or 15 pounds. When that person sets their mind to it and says, you know what, I'm going to get in better shape, I see the success ratio being way greater. And it's not because they have the access to all of the same things, the online testimonials, watching maybe a friend or family member do it. But what really seems to be more of a not even a motivator, just more of it just makes it easier for them, is they've been there before. And it's weird. I used to think that it was something that, like, everybody had the ability to do. I've never had a problem like looking at someone else and being like, well, if they can do it, I can do it. That's kind of always been my mentality. Mm-hmm. Like, if it exists, then I can do it. But the older I get and the more people that I talk to, and I see this a lot in business, right? Like, years ago, making $100,000 was a lot of money. And I would watch salespeople come in, and they just, 1 year would go by, they couldn't do it. And then the moment that salesperson hit that $100,000 mark, they never made less than $100,000 ever for the rest of their career. Why is that, right? They knew it was attainable. I could show them W-2s of other salespeople that were not even as sharp as them, not as good as salespeople, not even working as hard, and they could see it and know that it was somebody could do it. But in their minds, it's like, well, I've never done it, so, maybe it isn't real. I mean, I know it's real, but it's not real for me. And then the moment they do it, now it's like, well, I can't imagine not making 100,000. And again, I'm not, I'm just trying to quantify what I'm trying to describe. And so thinking about therapy to reel this all in, I personally have had a lot of success through therapy, right? And I said this the other day about something different, but it relates to therapy. I find that I'm very malleable, or I don't even know what the word is, but like I'm willing to give things a chance, right? I'm willing to put in the work in hopes that the results are there. And if they are, great. And if they're not, I'm not like upset about it. Trust the process, right? I think that's like what a lot of people say. And I think when people have bad experiences in therapy, it's twofold. It's either A, unrealistic expectations, or B, they've never had results because they haven't maybe we could talk about maybe the why behind that, but without achieving positive results with something, it's almost as if I could show testimonials, positive, but like if it doesn't happen to them, they don't believe it. And the moment that it does, it's like, I know what the word is. It's faith. It's faith, right? And not in the biblical sense, but
No, yeah.
faith.
Faith and hope, I would say.
Right. So why is it that the majority of people don't have faith and or hope?
So given that my kind of grounding in my field is that who we are today is based on where we came from, I would say that messages that we are bringing along with us from our past are sort of the black box that all of that stuff passes through. So it's more complicated than what you're saying. It's not just, I've been there so I can get back there. It's maybe an athlete has had more positive self-talk because they've worked through some of their demons being an athlete. And so when they're trying to get back to a body weight or, a physical state of being,
Right.
they don't have to battle all of that noise that somebody who maybe has been in a body that they haven't loved forever is having to deal with, right? So part of it is it an achievable goal? Part of it is, do I believe I can attain it? Is it attainable?
Right.
Part of it is, what are my expectations? Do I think that if I go and run on the treadmill 3 days in a row that I'm going to be there? Well, if that's the case, the end of those 3 days, not a lot's changed. I give up, right? And then that X factor, right? That sort of nebulous thing that is our belief system that sometimes we're aware of, sometimes we're not. Therapy can be really helpful in understanding what that is and detecting when it's causing those blockages or those stumbling blocks or speed bumps or whatever we want to call them.
You think it might be the kind of fast food society that we live in is what kind of creates maybe the lack of faith and or hope in things? Because we talked about the athlete, right? But I think that one I kind of want to stay away from because, the way that you physically look, there's a lot to it. I feel like the money one is a little bit more quantifiable in regards to just, numbers on a spreadsheet. And I'm bringing it back to the hope and faith thing. Do you think it has a lot to do with maybe the fact that everybody just wants instant gratification? That what is it called? I think delayed gratification, right? I find that delayed gratification is very, very difficult for people. And I don't know if that's how it's always been or if that's just the way it is now. I went to a seminar one time where this gentleman was talking about how he had a friend of his that, when they got out of college, he said he wanted to be a doctor. And he said, but you know what, I'm going to have to go to medical school, and that's going to be like 3 or 4 years. And by the time I get out of medical school, I'm going to be in a bunch of student loan debt. I'm going to be almost 30. And he didn't do it. And then flash forward to like 4 years later, and he was like, I think I'm going to go to medical school. But he's like, by that time, I'm going to be like 34, and I'm going to be in debt, and I want to have a family and everything. And the guy was like, can you imagine if you would have just started when you said it originally? You'd already be out of medical school. You'd be like halfway through your student loan debt, right? And so that delayed gratification, whether it's therapy, whether it's, getting on the treadmill or anything along those lines. The part for me that's the biggest hang up, this is the part that kind of like I feel like I'm trying to get out, but I'm just not articulating it correctly, is I'll relate it to religion for a moment, right? For someone to have faith in a religion like a man in the sky is a lot more difficult in my mind than having faith in something that you can like, I mean, a friend, we could bring someone in here right now. I could make a few phone calls of somebody who's like lost 10 pounds in the last couple months. Or I could bring in a salesperson who's like, yeah, you know, I never believed that making this kind of money is possible. We could get a line out the door with certain situations like that. And what is it about the fact that these things are real? They exist. They're quantifiable. The testimonials are there. We could get people that have had positive experiences with therapy, but you sit somebody down who has not had that experience, and it's like, it's right in front of their face, and they don't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to those invisible, sort of nebulous things that are floating around inside of us that challenge those, right? Somebody that's had a largely positive experience through life, hasn't been mistreated, has gotten what they needed, right?
Yeah.
Out of their relationships and their experiences, is going to go into new experiences with more faith and more hope than somebody who hasn't, who's faced more challenges, who's been cut off at the knees more often. And why that's happening to some people and not others, I don't know.
Well, my two questions for that comment, number one is, so is that self-talk of that person? Like, yeah, I see all of the success or whatever you want to call it, that these people have done A, B, and C and achieved results. Is that self-talk of that person? Yeah, that worked for you, but it won't work for me because I'm different. Because if I do all the things you just said, I will not achieve the same results. That's my first question. And then my second question becomes kind of what you described, being hurt, cut off at the knees, this, that, and the other, and then unwilling to take the chance of faith or hope or whatever. Doesn't that also become a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many factors. One thing I love about when we were talking last time and now we're talking, I love that you are looking for the explanation. And when we're talking about how people work, it's messy.
Yeah.
There is no one explanation. It's unique to each individual, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the, I think, part of the mystique that surrounds therapy is how can you possibly know, right? If you think about it, you know, there are things we know about ourselves, and we operate in the world knowing those things and making decisions and interactions and all of that based on those things. And then there's stuff that we don't know that's either outside of our awareness or for whatever reason we don't want to pay attention to it. And if you can think about it as sort of a black box, and stimulus comes in, right? You observe something in the world, and you have some immediate thoughts about it that you're aware of, then it passes through this black box and it's affected by all of the stuff that's in there. And then it comes out and you've given it meaning. And the meaning that you're giving it is based on both sort of observable thoughts and reactions that you've had, and then this thing that happens when it goes into that black box.
Your emotion of it.
Emotions, again, past experience, somebody that has never been successful. So you want to go with the $100,000 earner? Let's go way back to elementary school. And that person in elementary school had a hard time learning to read, or had a hard time learning to, manipulate numbers, and got all kinds of messages, right? You're so lazy. Why, just sit and do it, instead. And all of those messages, that person in that black box has this belief that they're incapable, right? that they're lazy, that they're inferior, that they're whatever.
That just sounds like apathy to me.
And well, it's bad education, right? I mean, if you think about the child who struggles with reading and they're in a school where they send them to a reading specialist and within 6 weeks they're at grade level and at the same level as their peers, that person in this same scenario has a black box that if I can't figure this out, I can go and talk to somebody who can help me
Right.
get on the same page as my peers. That person's going to attribute completely different meaning to the question, can I, achieve that goal of earning $100,000 a year?
I'm just thinking about the people that I've interacted with, and I think you've kind of made me realize just now. I think a lot of it is just, the apathy, and I'll relate it to therapy, where if I don't try, then I can't fail.
That's a part of it too, right? You have perfectionists that will operate that way. That's in that black box. There's introversion, extrovert, all of that.
Well, I would
stuff.
take it even the example that you gave with the reading and everything along those lines. I mean, those are things that happen in adolescence, and those are very difficult to deal with. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was younger, and so that hit home for me. But I guess what I'm getting at in respect to that is so the fear of, being told at the end of doing something that you didn't do it well enough or you didn't do it good is fear.
Or not only that, it doesn't have to be being told that you didn't do it well. For some people, just not being praised or acknowledged for doing it right. Just the absence of recognition or acknowledgement.
So I guess what I'm getting at is we're walking through this and talking about people who have either had bad experiences or kind of what I'm trying to work through, I guess, a little bit here. And when I talk with other people, I'm starting to identify that the majority of these people, that it's not that they don't believe that it's attainable. It's not that they don't think they can't do it. I'm starting to identify maybe it's more along the lines of the fear of going through the motions and doing the things and then not achieving the results is so terrifying that it's a lot easier for me to just not try at all, because if I don't try and I don't do it, then I can't fail. Because I used to be like that with sports, right? If I was I'm really bad at basketball, really bad, right? And so even when we're hanging out at someone's house and people are playing pig or horse where you shoot, for years when I was younger, I'm like, oh, I'm not even going to play, because I knew that I was so bad that I didn't even want to subject myself to playing, right? But it's just a game, right? It's for fun. And that was that apathy where if I didn't play, then I didn't have to worry about whether or not I was going to be good, when in all reality, I mean, we were just having a good time and people just wanted more people to play and have fun. So, you start playing and of course I lose, and who cares, right? This is a very basic example, but I think maybe apathy and apathetic individuals is at an all-time high.
I don't know if it's apathy. When you were saying that about basketball, I think bowling is a whole lot of fun, but I'm a horrible bowler.
Right.
And the greatest thing that happened, I think it was at my niece's, she had a birthday party at a bowling alley, and they put bumpers up for the kids. And I thought, I could do that.
Sure.
And so now when I go bowling, even if I'm bowling with people who are really good, I'm like, I want those bumpers up.
Right.
Because I can have fun.
But you've experienced that fun. And now you're aware of that fun.
Well, but it doesn't stop me from. There was a bowling alley here in Austin where I went, and they actually said, we don't put the bumpers up for adults. And I said, you are for me, because I'm not playing without them.
Okay.
Right? It's a tool. It's a resource.
Sure.
And my objective was not to win. It was to have fun. And if all of my balls go into the gutter, that's not fun. So where does that come from?
Maybe
right?
that's a life lesson.
I have a sense of resourcefulness maybe, or if there's a tool available to me that's going to make my experience help me achieve my goal, I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
Not everybody has that, right? So again, I think you're looking for a one size fits all, and it doesn't. We're talking about people. We're
Sure.
complicated. We're messy, and that's what makes relationships. So coming back to what we were talking about at the beginning, so difficult to figure out.
Yeah.
Right, because we're not just interacting with. I'm not just interacting with the adult you that's sitting across from me. I'm also interacting with the little kid that was diagnosed with dyslexia. And until you told me that, I didn't know that that was part of your experience.
Yeah.
That maybe has shaped the way you view yourself and the way you interact with the world, right?
It didn't. So for those that care, it's funny because one of my best friend's children he called me to tell me, and I said, I was diagnosed at almost the exact same age. And he goes, really? I never knew that. And I said, well, the truth is as I'm old enough now to look back on it, it may or may not have been something that was real. I don't personally think I have like a terrible time reading. I just think looking back on it, I was not interested in education. And so, as I got older, I met teachers that were really good and did a really good job of like getting me excited about whatever it was that we were learning. And I think sometimes this is actually going to come full circle. I think sometimes doctors try to put people in and generalize in a box. And I don't really think that I was necessarily dyslexic. I think that, 6-7-year-old me just didn't really give a shit. And so they're like, well, he's got to be dyslexic. He doesn't read well. It's like, no, I don't care about what any of this is.
We are meaning making. People are meaning making machines. Yeah. And when we encounter things that don't fit, we do things to make it fit. And so when you have a child who isn't being reached, maybe because they start school too young and they're just not ready for it, the system is oriented to pathologize, right? There's something wrong with this child because they're not fitting the system the way we expect them to.
So here I'm trying to
so it is possible.
Do the same thing.
Right. So it is possible. But it's because we're trying to make meaning, right? The school, the teachers come to the job with a framework, with an understanding. Some teachers get what I'm talking about, that each child is their own individual being. And if things are working, great. If they're not working, let's try and understand why. Get into that black box and try and understand why. And that's where things are successful. So full circle, coming back to the relationship between therapist and client, you make reference a lot to people who aren't willing to do the work. I would say that if someone's
but not out of laziness,
quote unquote, not willing to do the work,
right?
That it's because they haven't interacted with a therapist who has understood their whatever the I don't want to say barrier because that sounds negative, but whatever the difficulty is in getting there. So, back to this idea of sitting down and talking to people about their experiences in therapy, I think that a lot of times what happens is we therapists rely almost exclusively on our training and what we're told in books. And if a client doesn't fit that, we try to make them fit that. It just like a teacher, right?
Right.
Instead of saying, wait a minute, what do I need to change? I, the therapist, need to change in my approach to understand what's going on with this individual, that they're not operating in the way that I would have anticipated. Right? So instead of blaming the client, my least favorite word in my profession is resistance. When people talk about resistant clients, I don't think there's such a thing as resistance. People are coping. So if I'm talking to somebody and they're pushing back because they're not ready to go,
Right.
or I'm wrong and they're not ready to tell me that I'm wrong. So I need to anticipate that and assume that I might be wrong, and take a different approach, or that my client's not ready to go there, and then sit back and let them drive the car and let me know when they're ready to go.
Well, and then I would say, yeah, then it comes back to expectation as well, because do you ever feel as a therapist that you're like racing against the clock? In other words, maybe the client has expectations of having some sort of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like breakthrough in X amount of sessions. And if and when that doesn't happen, like time's up.
It does happen, right? Some clients will say, I've been coming for X number of sessions and it doesn't feel like anything's changed. Again, it's my job as a therapist to say, well, let's look at what's been going on. What's this been like? Is there something that I'm doing or not doing that you think is keeping you from being able to get where you need to go?
I like that.
It's sort of bringing humility to the process, right? I don't have all the answers. I know what I know.
Sure.
But I don't know you. And I didn't know that maybe you were misdiagnosed with dyslexia when you were 6, and how that's impacted you. Last time we talked about graying hair and baldness. And then after we were done, we kept talking about that. And I didn't know that you went bald.
19.
Yeah, at a young age.
That's when I started going bald, yeah.
And that has all of that has an impact.
That had much more of an impact than being diagnosed with dyslexia, I'll tell you.
Well, there you go. Probably also because at 19, you're so much more conscious of where you fit and
for sure.
How you look compared to your peers. And so there's so many things about people that we don't know just by looking at them or even meeting them, even people we know for long periods of time. Mostly because there are parts of ourselves that sort of live in the deep recesses because we don't think about it until something happens. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, remember when we went to, as a family on that trip and this funny thing happened and whatever. And then you're like, oh, that explains so much about why you do what you do.
Yeah.
Right? So that wasn't a great example, but.
Well, I wanted to ask you because I've been waiting. You've mentioned the catalyst or the X factor in regards to therapy. And so one of the things that we kind of touched on briefly, but I'd like to just get into a little bit more, like what do you feel are the important attributes of the relationship that someone that is seeking therapy needs in their therapist? In other words, you've kind of said that not everybody's for everybody, right? What would you say are the most important things, though, that, or if you want to do it the opposite way, you can relate it to yourself or just therapists in general. What are red flags that, like, hey, if this, then that? Like, what do you feel are good fits or bad fits when it comes to a client and a therapist?
That's a good question. I think that's part of what I would love to be able to get at if we could sit down and talk to people.
Yeah.
About their therapy experience, their experiences in therapy. I think what I tell people when they call me, prospective clients, when they call me if they've never been in therapy, I encourage people to interview several different therapists because sometimes it's just a matter of clicking and there's really no way to quantify
just
that.
Like chemistry.
Click. It's chemistry, right? There's we met networking and you meet a lot of people networking and there are people that you meet and you're like, yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to talk to that person again. And there are other people that you meet and they may be in an industry that has absolutely nothing to do with yours, but you're like, oh, that's somebody that I definitely want to schedule some time to sit down and get to know them better.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing. So I encourage people to interview several therapists and trust their gut. it sometimes takes more than one session to really know if it's going to be a good fit. But if you've been at it for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions and it's not feeling like it's working, it's not that the therapist's not a good therapist. It's not that you're not doing therapy right. Almost always, I will encourage people to go back to their therapist and talk about it. Because sometimes it's that there's some element that is in the room that's just not being talked about. And if they feel comfortable enough doing that, often that's enough to get you past that, whatever that thing is. But if it doesn't even feel comfortable to do that, there are lots and lots of therapists out there.
Sure.
Right?
How important do you feel like gender is in therapy? In other words, do men typically have better experiences having male therapists, or females have, vice versa? Is there anything to that?
I think that we show up differently in relationships with people of our same gender and people of different gender. So inherent in that, it's going to be different.
Yeah.
But I say that. It's going to be different because of different issues may come up or different things get worked through. But even if you talk to two, any client talks to two different female therapists, different issues may get worked on. Again, it all goes through that black box. And so there's maybe something about me, even subconsciously, resonates with mother issues. And so we wind up doing great work around, bad mothering. And then we hit a plateau. And that client ends therapy with me and then 2 years later goes to do therapy with somebody else, male or female. And back in the recesses, there's some resonance with a sibling. And so that stuff gets woken up and they do work around that. Or for whatever reason, they go to work with, another therapist and feel an incredible safety or nurturing quality that they never experienced, and trauma that they didn't remember happened surfaces, and they work through that, right? So it's really, that's what I'm talking about, is that it's a relationship, and we're not automatons. This week in different networking events, we've been talking a lot about AI, and the subject of AI therapy came up, and this didn't even click until just now. And a colleague of mine played around with one of the AI therapists and said, it's actually pretty good. Even doing like tricky test kind of things. But what my colleague said is, the human element for sure is missing. But what I'm talking about now is, I think, the fundamental reason why BetterHelp and AI type therapy software is going to be limited, because those algorithms, or in BetterHelp, you don't always have the same therapist. I think it
I'm not
varies.
familiar with.
I
know what you're talking about as far as the business, but I don't
know actually how it works. But I think that you're assigned a therapist, but you can call in or text in at all different times, and so you might get other people.
I think it could be really good for your business.
You miss that. You're missing that black box, right?
Yeah.
That feeling in the room that passes between people, that inspires us to talk about parts of ourselves that we hadn't talked about or didn't even know we needed to talk about.
Well, you said two things that really hit me. I mean, the first one, which is quick, is, the AI therapist, as much as on the knee-jerk reaction. It's like, oh boy, therapists are going away. I actually think it could be really good for, the industry in general, because I think about, so my ex-wife never really worked out when we first met. And then one day she somehow stumbled upon, I don't know if you remember P90X with Billy Blanks. P90X was this workout thing that got kind of popular in like the the early 2000s. And she loved it. And it was like these workouts that you would do at home on television and everything like that. And so in that timeline, you would think, oh, Billy Blanks is going to just destroy the personal training industry, right? Like now you can just do all of this from home. But what ended up actually happening was that, she followed the videos, she did all the things, and she ended up seeing some results, and that like encouraged her to, then she got really big into CrossFit, and just hear me out. But that required her to physically go somewhere, and, there's a trainer involved and everything along those lines. And I don't think she ever would have made it to that place if it wasn't for the DVDs, right? And so to relate that to therapy, I think there's a strong possibility that this will give people an opportunity to, for lack of a better term, just kind of troll and get a feel for maybe what therapy is like, and then achieve maybe minor results and go, hey, you know what, there is something to this. Mm-hmm. And that actually could generate more business for therapists and maybe even more of a higher quality client who's already like primed, for lack of a better term.
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah. What you were just talking, that example you gave about your ex-wife, it's all about pacing, right? We can only go as fast and as far as we can go.
Yeah.
And if you had plunked her in the middle of a CrossFit class in the beginning,
she'd have quit day one.
She would have quit, and she never would have given any of it a chance. So the same thing happens in therapy. If our pacing, the therapist's pacing, is too fast or too slow, that's why I encourage people to go and talk to their therapist, right? Mm-hmm. Some therapists will start really slowly. Well, some clients just are ready to hit the ground running, and if you don't meet them where they are, you lose them. It's not so different from, loan origination when you're doing what you do, right? You have to meet people where they are.
Right.
If they come in and they're scared to show you their financials, you can't say, okay, well, let's get you approved. Right? You've got to build the trust and the relationship.
Have the talks.
My hope for AI therapists is more in the crisis management side of things. Most therapists in independent practice are not set up to take calls from suicidal clients at 3 o'clock in the morning because most of us are sleeping.
Sure.
And suicide hotlines are great, and they exist in most communities, but most of them are volunteer run and don't have the capacity to take in all of the need. So, and honestly, in that kind of a situation, when it's a crisis, there's literally a series of maybe 5 to 7 questions that need to be asked. And based on how those questions are answered, the person can be directed, you need to go to the ER, you need to call your therapist and schedule a session for tomorrow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would be huge. I think lives could be saved if we could use AI in that way. I'm hopeful that will happen. I'm not super involved, partly because I'm over 50 and I have gray hair, and AI is not, my thing.
There's something sad about somebody calling a suicide hotline and talking to a chat bot, just for me personally. Like, man, that sounds like such a bummer. At that point when you really need, in my opinion, that human interaction. Except
that at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's pretty much all they're going to get is.
So better that than nothing.
How better that than being put on hold.
Sure. I would agree with that.
I mean, I actually had a client who called and was put on hold, and they hang up.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah.
You lose them. Luckily, I didn't lose her. But, and even thinking more broadly, in any kind of triage kind of situation, because when someone's in that level of crisis, I don't know that they're really letting the other person in. That they are so wrapped up in their whatever their experience is.
Right.
That really what they need is, okay, if this, then this, and if this, then that, and you need to go to this place.
Gotcha. One of the other things you had mentioned to me that I wanted to touch on is that, when I asked about the whole gender situation, whether, you find it important for maybe, a woman to deal with a female therapist, and you said people show up differently depending on who they are meeting. And I'm really glad that you said that, because I started thinking more about it, and I think that is something that's important to think about, because if I were seeking therapy, I think it would be important for the individual to, we talked about expectations, have somewhat of a realistic idea of what they're searching for, right? And maybe that is part of it. To answer the question I asked is like, maybe it's important to identify what it is you're trying to work through, because maybe if it is mothering issues, then sure, maybe meeting with a female therapist is best practices, or, I mean,
Men have mothering energy too.
well, that's true. That's true. But I was meaning it more along the lines of how the patient is going to show up, not what the therapist is capable of. I wasn't trying to gear it towards the therapist couldn't handle it. Is the patient, or do we call them patients?
You can. Client.
Is the client going to show up differently and talk about their issues with their mother differently than they would if it's a female versus male? And so I don't know the answer to that, but that was something that that intrigued me, because I started thinking, I've seen 3 female therapists and 1 male therapist, and I agree with you. I've definitely shown up differently, that it wasn't them, it was me. And contingent upon what it was that I was trying to work through, I definitely, because as I saw these 4 individuals, the reason that it went the way that it did wasn't because I had an opportunity to see all 4 at any given time, right? Certain people moved, and other people I felt like weren't a good fit. But now that I'm being a little more, critical, I'm almost thinking like, hey, you know what? Maybe that one person that I didn't think was a good fit was because I was trying to work through this. But then when I was thinking about how I was trying to work through that, he or she may have been a way better fit. And I don't know. Now I'm just like mentally masturbating about it. But, it's like I'm just thinking about how, yeah, it'd be great to have maybe like 3 or 4 individuals that you could meet with and kind of bob around, because as I'm walking myself through this and thinking about how people have reluctancy to do therapy, I think part of it is because of the relationship aspect, where you feel like if you meet with somebody and you see them, that like this is now somebody that you're stuck with, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not how it works. Nope. Right?
And just going back for just a second, when you were describing the 4 people, you just described why group therapy is so successful, right?
I can see that.
You can be in a group with men and women that you develop trusting relationships with. All of that stuff gets stirred up and activated in different ways, and you work through it. So that's part of the reason why I love doing group therapy so much, is it gives you that opportunity.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think about it. I had a gentleman that was similar in age. I had a woman that was similar in age. I had a woman that was younger than me. And then I had another woman that was older.
They're all going to pull for different stuff.
They did.
And some of it may be you making a conscious decision of this is what I want to work on. Mm-hmm. And everybody comes to therapy with a goal, right? They say, this is what I want to work on.
Well, I think you should. I would disagree with that personally, based on what I've been told.
I mean, even if it's
the goal is to feel better, but that's not really a goal.
Well, it's still a goal. But everything that happens in the therapy room is passing through that black box.
Sure.
Right? And both people in the relationship are contributing to what's in that black box. So even if the goal is to work on feeling better, or I don't know, achieve whatever, be less anxious or whatever. When things start flowing through that black box, you might find that you're going in a very different direction that you didn't even anticipate.
Yeah. I've
Needing,
had that happen.
right?
Yeah.
That's what makes, again, coming back to why I would love to be able to sit down with you and talk to people about their experiences in therapy, because
Oh, we're going to make that happen.
the mystique that is attached to therapy is all about, it's that, right? It's like I went thinking that I needed to work on this, and I came out of it working on something completely different, but it's exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I got there. Right.
Yeah. Well, and it's, again, it's about the faith and trusting the process, right? And managing expectations. I mean, those are all the things when we talk about some of the misnomers, at least in my opinion, from my experience. I think those are the two reasons why people are reluctant to seek therapy, or better yet, have had bad experiences.
But coming back to, how we met networking.
Yeah.
When you talk to people that network, right? Even though the leaders of an organization might do a phenomenal job of saying, these are the expectations, it takes time, give it 6 months to a year, inevitably you meet people that after 2 months they quit,
Yeah.
and they're like, I didn't get a single referral. Well, were their expectations being managed? I guess they were given the information, but again, it passed through that black box and their expectations weren't managed.
Yeah.
Right? And those are people that, that you keep talking about trusting the process, for whatever reason, weren't able to trust the process.
Yeah. Well, and using that analogy, I think some of it too is that I think sometimes people, you can give them the blueprint and the expectation, and they kind of go, well, I'm just going to wing it. I mean, if someone were to say to me, hey, this is going to take 6 months to a year, that has to be digested.
Absolutely.
Right?
But if...
And then what if I know for a fact I don't have 6 months to a year?
Okay, but if the tape that you have playing in your head is, I'm going to join this group, and in 2 months, I'm going to be killing it. I'm going to get, X number of referrals, and I will have made my, return on investment, make all my money back, and then some. You're not hearing what's being said to you.
Yeah.
Because what's going on inside your head is the black box. And
Yeah.
so you hit that 2 month mark, and you're like, well, I'm not the problem. The group didn't do what,
Yeah, I almost think it's one of those things that you almost need to gain agreement. I think if you were to ask in the networking space, and we can relate this to a lot of different things, like if I were to say to somebody, hey, this is going to take 6 months to a year, and they go, okay, because they want the results, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they want the results. I think flat out asking somebody do you have 6 months to a year? I think you'd be astonished at the amount of people that are like, no, I actually don't. I cannot ride this out for 6 months to a year. Can't do it. And then you have to ask yourself, well, then what are we doing?
But those are the people that throw good money after bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I don't think they're
buy
saying,
leads.
I'm going to kill it in 2 months. I'm the outlier. I do not think that is what is going in that black box.
No, maybe it's,
I think it's just,
I need to change gears. Maybe
Yeah.
I need to apply for a job and,
Right.
become a W-2 employee.
I think it's just, I'm going through the motions, right?
Yeah.
Because I think in anything, if you say to somebody, I mean, even with your health, I mean, look at what people do with their health, where it's like, hey, this has to happen, and then people let themselves go so far to the point where it's like, you need to drastically change your lifestyle right now. It's going to take 2 to 3 years for you to really get to a position of where you need to be in order to be truly healthy and have longevity. And it's like, this person doesn't have that.
Again, there's so many factors, right? You have the person that goes to their doctor and their doctor says you have high cholesterol, and
Right.
we can try medication, but it's better to try diet and exercise first. And they go out and they kill it. And they start walking every day and they change their diet and they go back in, 3 months and the doctor's like, wow, you did great. We're good.
But they have the time. So when we relate it to the NIA thing, if I were to say, hey, Fabi, this is going to take 6 months to a year, can you go 6 months to a year without receiving any sort of success? I think you'd be surprised at the amount of people that are like, if this takes 6 months to a year, which you're telling me it's going to. If this takes 6 months to a year, I'll be out of business. I think you'd be surprised how many people would say that if they were forced to admit it.
Well, yeah, I don't know how many people are honest with themselves.
And this relates to a lot of things.
Right? But I think that sort of comes back to what you were talking about, the sort of the fast food mentality.
Right.
That, I want it now,
Or I need it now.
Right. But again, if it's something that you need that quickly, there's I don't know of any way to achieve that.
Yeah.
Without putting in the time.
People are complicated.
For sure, they're messy. I help take the mess out of it. Yeah.
So I want to finish up by just kind of giving that call to action, like I made mention of. I mean, the conversation we had in the beginning before we kind of got started here, and I just want to harp on it here in the very end, is that we are looking for individuals who have experienced therapy and had either good or bad experiences, because we would love to have additional conversations with additional guests and find out what works and what doesn't, right?
Yeah.
Because it is complicated and everybody's different.
Demystify and destigmatize therapy. I would love if we could get that going. And just to be clear, we wouldn't be talking to people about their personal issues.
Yeah.
It's really just talking more intellectually about the experience of therapy.
Right, like getting someone on that said, hey, I went and I did this and it took this long and it didn't work for me and I had a horrible time. We don't want to hear about the mommy issues or the divorce. We just want to hear what happened and why you felt that it was beneficial or not.
Yep.
Pretty simple, right?
So seek us out.
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, how would they get in touch with you if they were interested?
Oh, well, there's many ways. I mean, you can comment on the video. You can reach out directly through the messaging. I mean, my information is everywhere. All you have to do is Google me or my name. My number is very accessible. Shoot me a text, all of the things. I'm a very unprivate person, so you can reach out at any time.
Okay. And you can reach me through my website.
Yeah.
I have a contact page on my website.
What is the website, Fabi?
drfabi.com. drfabi.com.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Well, it's always a pleasure having you.
Yeah, it's great being here.
Make sure we get you back on next time with a guest.
Absolutely.
And we'll keep the podcast coming. What was it that you wanted to call it? You had a name for it.
I don't know if anybody's doing it or using it, but I was thinking Therapy Unplugged.
Therapy Unplugged. I love it.
So
Thanks, Fabi.
Come join us.
Yeah, totally.